Well, first of all, welcome everybody, all GCMA members, to this GCMA Hot Topics. We're joined today, our guest is Rob Corcoran from the Revenue Club. Rob's director, along with Chris Knight. Unfortunately, Chris wasn't able to join us today, but I know that Rob will be able to pull it off all by himself. So really, the topic for today is how to commercialize and maximize your online tea time management system. And we've chosen this subject based on the current situation, really, arising from last summer, where the decision was taken that in order to be able to socially distance effectively, that a golf club needed to have a registration process. And the obvious choice for golf clubs was to install a tea time management system. So Rob is an expert in this field, and he's been doing this with the Revenue Club for the last 4 years roughly. But before that, he was with Tea Times and teatimes.co.uk, I think.
Yeah, Times. Yeah.
You can correct me on that. So really, we are aware that whenever golf does restart, that it's most likely going to be membership focused, possibly 2 balls, also the restrictions of daylight hours. Hopefully we'll be back before the clock changes. But that does mean that there is scope and room for some premium pricing within your green fees. But it's really knowing when you have that sort of available capacity, and hopefully that's what Rob's going to help us with today. So without any further ado, I'd really just say thank you all very much for turning your cameras off and your microphones off. We do have the chat box if anybody wants any questions. There are some natural breaks within the presentation, I think, where we can answer questions. So by all means, put your questions in there, and I'll put those questions to Rob. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Rob. Rob, you're very welcome.
Great, thank you very much for having me, Gavin. I'm just going to share my screen here. If you could hopefully just give me the thumbs up that you can see it okay. How does that look?
I'm not seeing that.
Bear with me.
Yeah.
Great. Have we got it? Good
Perfect.
Stuff. We'll kick off. Thanks very much for that introduction, Gavin. As he's mentioned, we work with 120 clubs across the UK, helping them to make the most of their online sales channels. So hopefully that gives me the necessary credentials to talk on this subject to you all. Those 120 clubs are a fairly even mix of private members clubs, proprietary clubs, national chains, and a handful of municipals. And over the last 4 years that we've been in operation, we've evolved our working practices to increase the online sales at all of our golf clubs. And it's these working practices that I'm going to talk through today, that hopefully sharing them with you they'll be of help to you at your golf clubs if you were to roll out some of these ideas that I can pass on to you. Excitingly for us and for you, hopefully this is a real boom area of the industry, particularly so over the last 12 months or so. So I hope you'll be enthused by the subject, as we are all the time, and the potential that it has for you. And I promise in the midst of all of it not to talk anything about the world handicapping system or the independent golfers or nomadic handicaps at all. I won't open those can of worms, because thankfully we don't have to deal with them at all. So the scope of the agenda that I'll go through today is some rationale about why it's a good idea to operate online with your tea time sales. And then to talk about the 3 pillars of effective online green fee sales. So those are developing an effective pricing strategy, digital communications or your marketing strategy, and reporting. And these 3 pillars that we refer to, that we roll out across all of our clubs, are very much interdependent. So if you were to remove one of those areas, then the impact of what you're trying to achieve is very much diminished. So we apply equal importance to all of them. So why is it so important? Why has it become so important over the last 12 months or so? If you cast your minds back to the end of the initial lockdown, as Gavin mentioned, when England Golf released that document with some guidance on how best to reopen the golf courses to enable them to stay safe, there was a very clear direction saying wherever possible, tee times must be booked online. That's both member and visitor tee times. Coupled with the fact that there was this rapid transition to online bookings for many things, such as just going to the pub, booking up a restaurant trip, and as we're still finding now, people scrapping over getting access to click and collect slots at Sainsbury's. Add to that this massive surge in participation that we experienced last year, with many more people taking to golf and a lot of lapsed golfers coming back to the game. You almost had this perfect storm of this huge surge in online tee time bookings. And to put some data behind it, just to support all of that, from what we saw, there was a 234% increase in online sales over the course of the year. The average online sales at a UK golf course in 2020 was £71,000. Online bookings have now overtaken offline as the preferred booking method, where we're monitoring both online and offline sales. Visitor demand has tripled, so we can tell that through the volume of web traffic that's now going through to booking engines. So that happened over the course of the latter part of the year, given that the 4 months of the year are pretty much written off due to weather and the lockdown. And then there's other benefits, such as the fact that it's a 24/7 sales channel, in that you can still take sales when the pro shop is shut. We often see a spike in the web traffic to the booking engines for the golf clubs that we work with between about 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. at night, where people are sat down in front of the TV and dual screening and then booking their round of golf for the following day or the next couple of days at the same time. So by not having that sales channel open, then golf courses may potentially be missing out on bookings. It also enables far easier data collection. And there's been a lot of talk in the golf industry over the last 6 months or so about how are we going to go about retaining these people that have started playing again last year or that are new to the game. And I would suggest that this is one of the keys to that level of retention. So where golf courses can now far easier collect the data of the new customers that are coming through to them, they can continue to communicate with them in a very easy fashion by having their email addresses to hand and developing a much closer relationship with those customers, and then hopefully upselling them to memberships further down the line. It also, by shifting more of the sales online, improves efficiency at the club by reducing those relentless phone calls that go into the pro shop, and so the people on the front desk that are welcoming golfers as they come through aren't trying to juggle multiple phone calls while they're trying to deal with customers face to face at the same time. So the key thing then is, how do you go about making the most of these this massive increase in online sales? And I'll start around the first pillar of effective green fee sales, which is the pricing strategy. And this is often, there is very little thought that goes into the green fee pricing structures at golf clubs, but there are so many different reports that you can use to inform the decision-making process. The first one that we tend to use is around utilization. So this is considering when golfers are playing, when you anticipate that they're going to be playing at the particular time of the year that you're looking at, considering both member play and visitor play, twilight times, and then obviously targeting those quiet times to try and grow your green fee revenue. This is an example of a utilization report that you can pull very easily if you use BRS or Intelligent Golf. It's there in the back end of the reporting suite with those systems. And so we look at that report and then we manipulate the way that it can be viewed to give you an idea as to when the course is being heavily used and where the spare capacity is. So this is a fairly routine example of one of our clubs where you can see there's a heavy footfall on weekend mornings. You can see that there's a decent proportion of probably member play on weekday mornings. It then quietens off in the afternoon and gets much, much busier in the evening. And this is a trend that we saw materialize. It was a marked difference in the trend that we saw materialize last summer, where there was this huge proportion of people that were playing late on in the day, what would traditionally be termed twilight times, from 4 o'clock through till 6 o'clock. You can see that particularly during the week. And so where historically golf courses have been quite quiet at these times and pushed out fairly promotional competitive rates, historically this is probably where golf courses would offer out their cheaper times. Now, because there's been this such a surge in bookings at those particular times, it's these ones in particular that I'm focusing on. It doesn't really seem to make that much sense pushing out your cheapest rates at these times, when actually they're probably the busiest times of the week. And I would anticipate this is going to continue this summer as well. So where so many people now have flexible working arrangements, they have the ability to perhaps start work a bit earlier and clock off earlier, or they don't have to do a commute anymore because they're working from home. This is why we think that there's been such a surge in these twilight sales. So for many of our clubs this year, we'll probably look at a report like this, which will look broadly similar, and recommend that they actually target these earlier afternoon times where there's far more capacity, actually increase their rates around the twilight times, which are now in heavy demand. You can see here 93% utilization, which is very high on a Tuesday night. And also target these weekend afternoon times, which traditionally are very underutilized. So that's really where the spare capacity is. And then around these times where the course has got very high utilization, then the view there is to increase the yield that you're getting from those tee times. So potentially looking at increasing prices. The next area of the pricing strategy to consider alongside the utilization then is the market value. So the question is, what is it that golfers are prepared to pay to play your course? And we often find that there's a bit of a disconnect between what the people who are running the club think that the golf course is worth and what golfers are prepared to pay for it. And that amount that they're prepared to pay will vary according to the time of the day of the week, the condition of the course, and what the going rate is for that particular geographic area and where that course sits amongst that competitor set. So competitor analysis is quite an important element of what we do when we're putting together pricing structures. Ultimately, what you want to try and achieve is that when the golfers are walking off the 18th green, having played the course, is that they feel like they've got great value for money. And that then will achieve the repeat business that you want and further increase in your green fee revenue if people are coming back because they want more, because they feel like they've got a great deal for the course overall. One recommendation that I make to most of our courses, and this has certainly been the case in recent months, is that there is a great opportunity to increase your price at the moment because of the high level of demand. And that has a number of different benefits to it, namely that there's no star rating within the golf club industry, much like there is with the hotel world. So if an individual doesn't know anything about your golf course, then they will make a judgment about the level of golf course it is according to the headline price and what that headline price is, or your rack rate. It will also benefit you in so much that when members are doing their sums on how many times they need to play each year to get their money's worth for their membership subs, if you've got a higher rack rate, then those membership subs will look like better value for money. It will make your society packages look like better value when priced up against a routine headline green fee. And then also from a green fee perspective, if let's say you have increased your rack rate to £50, but then you've identified a quiet time in the afternoon where perhaps you put out a £25 green fee, you can then advertise a 50% saving message alongside it. And it's really these saving messages that that golfers are kind of looking for when they're shopping around online, because they have that mentality of the online shopper. So that'll be something that will appeal to them, because they'll feel like they've got a great deal and help with that perception of value for money. I often use the bottle of wine analogy with this, where if, let's say, you're stood in the supermarket and you're looking at 2 bottles of wine, both of them are priced at £5, and one of them is reduced from £10, which one do you go for? Well, of course, you opt for the one that's been reduced with 50% off. And so it's kind of appealing to that that savvy shopper, that and using tactics like that will help to increase your online sales. It's helpful to have an appreciation of what the economic conditions are and the economic forces at play when you are putting together your pricing structures. So historically, most of the golf clubs in the country have been in this quadrant, in that they're battling against this oversupply of golf clubs in the country, and we were struggling with a reducing level of participation across the UK. So there was relatively low demand with high supply. What we're almost certainly going to find ourselves in when the golf courses reopen is this upper left quadrant, where tee times are going to be in very high demand to both visitors and members. And there's going to be a relatively low supply of tee times available, particularly if we reopen with 2-ball play. And if we reopen relatively soon, then there's still going to be relatively a low level of a short amount of daylight available. So it's a great opportunity to make sure that you're charging those premium prices that we've just talked about, and taking full advantage of what I think is going to be a perfect storm again when we reopen. As the daylight increases, you'll probably then find ourselves in the upper right quadrant here, where we can make sure that the routine rates are on sale, where there are more tee times that come back on sale, and we're hopefully able to get back to 4-ball play, and then sort of transition through into the routine rates. Here, there will inevitably be times of the day and times of the week where there will be low utilization, and so it is important also to have the competitive pricing still in place to drive additional traffic through those times. So once you've got your pricing structure in place, then the key thing is to make sure that you are being dynamic. And so dynamic pricing, revenue management really is where we started at our levels of service. The important thing is just to look at this and consider that if your pricing structure is not working, then change it. Make regular rate adjustments according to the changing conditions, particularly those economic conditions that I was just talking about. And we know that we're going to see some big changes to those conditions over the course of this summer. You can do that by making regular reviews of the tee sheets. If you predefine your pricing parameters, so stipulate what you're happy to charge at particular times of the week and in particular seasons to your team, you can empower your team to make those changes for you, so it doesn't need to all rest on the head of the secretary or manager. So hopefully that's given you some good ideas about some helpful pricing tactics to employ. I'm just going to pause there and see if there's any questions that have come in around the pricing side of things at all.
We haven't got anything in the chat box at the moment, Rob.
No worries. Okay. Yeah. Feel free to send any questions and I can answer them as we get to it at the end. So moving on to the second pillar of effective online sales. The second area of equal importance is the digital marketing side of things. So you've got an effective pricing strategy set up that you know is going to sell well, and the important thing then is to ensure that you are broadcasting it to the wider audience, your target market. So you could have the most amazing pricing structure, but if no one can see it, then you're not really going to see the full benefits of that structure of additional sales. And then on the flip side, you can have the most amazing marketing campaign set up, but if you've got a poor pricing structure, then again, you're not going to see the benefits that you could potentially achieve there. Now, from a marketing perspective, over the last few years, there's been a lot of talk about the importance of data collection, collecting people's email addresses, and building up your social media following. But the main question is, why is it that we need to do that? And clearly the importance is commercializing those channels to make sure that they are generating additional revenue for you. Now, we often sit down with golf clubs that we're starting to work with and ask them how big their visitor database is, and they look at us blankly and just say they're not sure, or they're not sure if they have one. And then we dig into their T-sheet software, which if you've been using online bookings for even the last 6 months or so, there will be a number of people that have booked with you historically that will have opted in to hear from you directly about any offers, or they've said that they want to actively receive your marketing communications. So if you as a golf club are not using that visitor database, then there's a potential missed opportunity there. And the same will be true of the social media following. So people who are actively liking your page and following you on Twitter, those people want to hear from you. They want you to put up posts about the club and send out special offers. So there is a great opportunity there to commercialize those channels. And the great thing about it is that it's free and it's very, very targeted. Using those channels, there's also the opportunity to cast the net a little bit further. So we've got social media posts and organic ones and emails that we can send out, but you can also go a step further by setting up digital marketing campaigns across Google AdWords and Facebook Business are the ones that we have the most success with, which are very targeted. They're incredibly cheap for what you do, and they provide you with an excellent return on investment. So clearly these are the areas that people are looking in. It's a great way to capture your target market and get quite a considerable amount of coverage. And one final point that I would make about the marketing side of things as well is, do not neglect your imagery, because you could set up the best marketing campaign, but if the pictures of the course are fairly average, it can render the whole campaign fairly ineffective if it doesn't look that great, as good as it might be set up in the background. Okay, we okay for questions? Any come in on the marketing front?
Yeah, we have a few questions, so
okay.
we'll get through those. So we'll start off with Andrew. How to manage perceived cheap golf versus the members' dissatisfaction at it being offered?
Okay, good question. It's often one that's thrown up. So the important thing there is to ensure that when you're looking at utilization, if I flick back a couple of slides here to the heat map, if you can identify when the members are playing, ensure that around all of these member times, you've got your full price green fee on sale. You do find at a lot of golf clubs, particularly the real member focused ones, that if you start to throw out more competitive green fee rates, that there's sometimes some kickback on that, and understandably so. But the argument would be that you are targeting the times, and you can back this up with this data and say, look, golf club members, we can see here that our course is very underutilized at these times. So what we're aiming to do is to make use of our key asset, generate additional revenue in those times. And with that revenue, if let's say it's a private members club, we know that we're going to reinvest those green fees and keep your subs down.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the key to that, Rob. And there's still a couple more questions, but really just my own personal comment on that, it's perhaps the investment that clubs decided took some decisions with the uncertainty and the pandemic that they decided not to invest in improvements to the golf course, etc. Once you put the data in front of them, of how much you can earn from green fees by being selective and using those tee times which the members aren't really using at all, and using the premium pricing that is possible at the moment due to the situation. You can help pay for those improvements and start to reinvest in your golf club and or the golf course and the clubhouse as well. So there definitely is an opportunity there. So we'll move on to Martin. Do you expect that due to high demand for visitor tee times, last minute discounts become less of a necessity?
Yeah, that may be the case. You can still employ those tactics, but if you're employing them from a higher baseline because you've put your headline rate up in the first instance, then I would suggest that the discounting, I wouldn't sort of see it as, it's often seen as a dirty word, but it's the approach of being flexible, which is really the important thing. Making sure that you sell those tee times. It doesn't need to be cheap, but as long as you're selling the tee times, that's really the key thing, and pitching them at the right level so you're getting that revenue in and really realizing that revenue opportunity.
Yeah, and just one final comment, and I'll let you move on with the presentation. And this comes from Martin. The problem is many members follow the golf club's social media and dislike seeing special offers or reduced green fees. Yeah,
really good point that. And we had a couple of issues where we've started work with golf clubs and then learned the hard way that we put out promotional offers, and then there's been a lot of kickback from the members, and so we check that now with the club before we get going with them, because in some cases the social media following is predominantly members, as you rightly point out. And so it's really not appropriate in that instance to use those channels as a promotional tool. I guess in an ideal world, you would have perhaps a separate external social media channel that you would use, and then perhaps a closed group social media channel for the members' communication. If that's an issue, because it's quite difficult to build up an organic social media following now, it wasn't so much so a few years ago. Then you can set up paid campaigns like this one on the left-hand side here, where you actually exclude the current social media following, so it's actually not visible to the people that follow the golf club. So that's quite a good way of circumnavigating it. It's not particularly expensive to do it.
Okay, good. I think that's answered all of those very well. Thanks, Rob.
Cool. Okay, so moving on to the final pillar of effective online green fee sales, which is reporting. And we use this to inform our decision-making process and back up the decisions that we make with the golf clubs that we work with. This section's a little bit chart heavy, so bear with me, but there's some important data in here that hopefully you can glean a few things from. What this enables you to do is to see if the activity that you're carrying out across the pricing strategy and the marketing strategy is working. So this chart here is an example of our reporting suite. So we drop all of the data from the sales from our golf clubs into reports.golf. And this gives you the average here of all of the golf clubs that we work with. So this is the performance of our average club across the UK. As I say, £71,000 in online green fee sales in 2020. 2019 wasn't a bad year, but even then, the level of business tripled from one year to the next. So it just shows what a groundbreaking year it was. There are two sort of key areas that we monitor from a marketing point of view. The top one here on the right hand side, the booking engine web users. Now, if you're carrying out additional digital marketing activity, you should see an increase in your booking engine activity and the number of people coming through to that. So if you're not seeing a surge in web users, then that would be an indication those campaigns aren't working. And then looking at the bottom section here, and this is an area that we monitor all the time, and that's your website conversion, which is the number of these web users that subsequently go on to make a booking, or lookers to bookers, as it's often referred to as. So if a golf club has ample availability within the tee sheets and the conversion is not as high as we'd expect it to be, it suggests that we've overcooked the pricing. So it's a really good indicator to see how effective that pricing structure is. And then on the flip side, if The conversion is exceptionally high, as we identified at a number of our clubs last year. It would indicate that there's an excellent opportunity to increase the rates. We had this with probably 5 or 6 clubs last year who hadn't put their pricing up for ages, and they were really nervous about doing so because they tried to do it in the past, and because of the oversupply in the market, they'd found that when they put their pricing up beforehand, it led to then a big drop off in sales. But we were pointing out to them and saying, look, your conversion is absolutely sky high. It's a great opportunity to finally make those rate increases that you can. They subsequently did. They were getting far higher yield per tee time, and now, because they were charging those higher prices over the course of the year, the perception, or the local perception, of what that course is actually worth has shifted now, and so they're able to then continue from a much higher base level at the start of the coming year. So it's really using this data to inform those pricing decisions and the marketing decisions that you carry out. This is a snapshot of the Google Analytics dashboard from one of our clubs. So it is an example that is very typical of the clubs that we work with. And I'll just draw your attention here to the bottom left chart, just under demographics there, in the age groups. And this was a marked change that we saw in 2020, where there was a big increase in the young adults that were playing. You can see here the largest demographic group of people that were coming through to this booking engine were the 25 to 34-year-olds, then the 35 to 44, and it's in an ascending age order. In the previous year, you could have flipped this on its head. It was the older golfers that were playing, that were looking at the booking engines this most, and then there was like the sliding scale of younger golfers. And so really, this is what the industry has been crying out about. It's really good news to see this volume of younger adults that are playing the game. It's really reinforcing the reports that are out across the market about this new surge in demand. We think, again, that this has probably happened because it's been widely publicized that the younger adults were among the biggest group that were affected by being furloughed, that were potentially out of work and had a lot more time on their hands, or indeed they were flexi working from home. There's probably a large number of young parents in amongst this group that were desperate to escape the house and homeschooling responsibilities over the course of the summer, so legging it off to the golf course at the earliest opportunity. So again, really encouraging to see these people playing. If we can get their data, continue to communicate with them, and then hopefully that we'll be able to retain those players and just strengthen the industry overall with the volume of people that are playing. The other chart that I just draw to your attention is this one just up in the top right here, where you can see that 68-69% of the web traffic that comes through to booking engines is done on a mobile device. So if you are using a non-responsive mobile booking engine, the old style BRS one is non-mobile responsive. It would be worth changing that, because that will be affecting your conversion figures that I showed you on the previous slide. And then finally, on the reporting side of things, it is important to consider the costs associated with your online sales. So we've come across a number of clubs in the past where their online sales appear to be relatively healthy. You then look at the relative cost of sale, and in this we would include third-party commissions, barter times, and booking fees. That actually mean that they're not realizing the full potential of profits that they otherwise could be. So because golf courses haven't been as proactive in the past with their own direct marketing, they're perhaps being a little over reliant on third parties to generate online sales for them. I saw a report a couple of days ago that gave an overview of the hotel industry, and in many senses the online bookings on golf courses echo what the hotel industry does, and it's said that there's been this enormous increase in direct bookings with hotels and far fewer people going through the third parties and the aggregators, and this is a trend that we've seen across the golf club world as well. So there's a great opportunity to kind of capitalize on that customer consumer behavior. The other area that I would just give you a word of warning about is the bath times that can be enormously expensive, and they tend to displace the green fee revenue rather than just making use of unused tea times. We can see that when we apply the equivalent cost of those barter times to these costs here, that it really does impact the potential revenue that a golf club could achieve. And then when they remove them, there's a subsequent big increase in the level of revenue that the golf club's realizing. You'd be far better off just paying for the tee sheet system outright. The other thing is that clearly when you've got someone else controlling the prices of your tee times, it can put your pricing strategy out of kilter. And so when you've put so much thought, depth of thought into it, then it's perhaps not the greatest approach when you're adopting a completely integrated and comprehensive pricing strategy. So I'll take any reporting questions just at the end. I'll just summarize here quickly, if I may, that hopefully I've given you some decent rationale as to why online bookings are so important. There are multiple different benefits, and the key one I think I would pull out is that online bookings have now overtaken offline bookings as the key way that people are booking around golf. And then on the three pillars of effective online green fee sales, firstly, pricing. There are many different areas to consider. It shouldn't just be a finger in the air. There's so many different factors that you should take into account. Most importantly, don't be afraid to increase your prices, but above all, be flexible. On the marketing front, make sure that you're utilizing those email, social media, and other online channels that are available to you, but bear in mind that those channels just won't deliver the results that you want if your pricing structure is no good. And then finally, on the reporting front, just make sure that you use those reports that are available to you in the back end of your tee sheet booking software to influence and inform your decision making, and use those reports to help you making those decisions around your pricing and your marketing. But finally, if you were to do all of these things effectively and make sure you've got all of them covered, it will undoubtedly increase your revenue, it will reduce your costs, and really help with the future sustainability of the golf course. Just like to finish off by saying that if you would like some additional help with getting a strategy set up for the coming season, we would be very happy to put together a report that gives you a snapshot of your own online sales for all GCMA members. That should just help to with your planning process at the beginning of the season. So if you would like to take advantage of that, then please feel free to contact me directly, and I can send over a report. You would have seen some of the screenshots from reports.golf that I used over the process of the presentation.
Great, Rob. And we'll just leave that slide up for as long as possible, so everyone gets a chance to note down your details. I'll just read out, I think we have a convert already in the group from Andrew. We did the data analysis last summer and we're really surprised at times when we thought we were really busy, and the opportunity was still there to offer member, guest, and visitor bookings. Analysis is the key. I then posed the question if anyone on the call has a barter agreement in place. Jim said he does. Martin said they've bought BRS software after using a barter system for 2 years. So yeah, I think there's some key issues there. The other thing I would say that I think the huge advantage that I can see from this sort of data analysis would also be your staffing levels. I think when we go back to having some sort of hospitality within the clubhouse, it's likely to be perhaps more labor intensive than before, with obviously more cleaning going on. Also the table service, which I think a lot of people liked, but that obviously means more staff. So with this analysis, you can decide, obviously you'll know when you're busiest, but you're going to know who you're busiest with. So it's really going to help decide, when you have, sort of full staffing levels and reduced staffing levels. So that would just be that would just my comment on that. Yourself, Rob?
Yeah, very much so. That's a really key point, that actually, you know, just to be able to appreciate when the golfers are going to come through. We actually had courses say a similar thing to us last summer, by having a better appreciation of when people are going to be playing. You can back that up with the data, which is incredibly important.
Good. So haven't got any more questions coming through for you on that. And anybody like any final comments or questions for Rob while we have him here?
I'd be very happy to take them directly. If anyone wants to drop me an email or give me a call at any point, then I'd be really keen to hear from people.
Yeah, and by all means, and you know, take advantage of that promotional offer that Rob's put in front of us today. I think it's you know, it's an opportunity to have a look at it. I think, you know, whenever you do go to the board or committee with a proposal, you know, if it's backed up by the data, then there's not really that much that they can say about it. You know, if there are any objections, then it becomes sort of personal or just or emotional. So it's the data just doesn't lie. So I think that's certainly the way forward. So yeah, just a few thank yous coming in, Rob, from everybody on the call. So I'll do that. Just thank you very much for your time and expertise today on GCMA Hot Topics. We'll be seeing you, our members, that is, coming up shortly. Next week we have GCMA Inspire with David Nash on Wednesday at 2 o'clock. I do believe we do have a GCMA Know-How on Tuesday at 2 o'clock also. So keep your eyes out for that on the e-newsletter and other social media outlets and communications from the GCMA. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time today. Once again, Rob, thank you very much for coming on and sharing that with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, good.